So as Alex mentioned, I'll just give a bit of an overview of work we're doing to kind of bring all of this effort of developing tools and resources and just identifying tools and resources that are out there in a coordinated way. So I'll start off and then I'll pass it over to the lightning talk folks. So we're trying to obviously build transformational change. This is our equation of how we're going about it. We're trying to build capacity in research to do very partnered approaches to the work we're doing, finding solutions with our partners, and then mobilizing that knowledge and scaling solutions. That's really critical. We want to get them out there being used by employers across Canada and internationally as well, because our outcomes that really matter to us is having inclusive workplaces and also new and applied research norms that we do this kind of partnered research is the way forward for all academics working in this space. And so that mobilizing knowledge and scaling solutions is where we're at currently with our initiative. We're about just past halfway of our funding envelope. We're going till 2028. So we're in that stage where I think about we've gathered a lot of knowledge, we've found some solutions, we've scan the environment of what other people are doing as well, and we want to get that work out there for everybody to use. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're doing that. One of the things we've been doing is scanning for existing tools and resources, things that other people have developed. There's lots of great stuff out there. It's just finding it that's sometimes a challenge. You know, lots of employers don't have the time to do that searching. So we've been gathering these tools and resources and trying to contextualize them. To date, I think we've come across about 150 different tools and resources, and we're in the process of trying to catalog them into a tools and resources library that will be a portal on our web page. And some of the things we're thinking about as we're contextualizing these tools are about, you know, what is the core organizational activity that it's targeting? You know, what's its purpose? You know, what type of tool is it? Is it training? Is it guidance? Is it an audit tool? Who's the target audience? You know, is it open access? Is it free of charge to use? You know, is it evidence-based? And then what are the accessibility features that are really prominent that should be profiled about this tool? So these are some of the things we're thinking about as we're identifying those tools and resources that are out there for people to use. And one of the processes we're doing, we're just starting up on this now, is what we call a modified Delphi panel of experts. These are people who work in this space, who have years of experience of working in workplaces as service providers, maybe in the broader policy arena, who have deep knowledge about this and can help us figure out the best way to contextualize these tools and resources. So we're currently in the process of recruiting for the Delphi panel, and over the period of about 6 months, we'll go through multiple iterations with them to identify the best way to contextualize and categorize and create this web portal to help with navigation of tools and resources that will be housing within this. We'll obviously point people to where to find them. They're not necessarily our tools and resources. Ours will be there too, but there's a plethora of them out there that we want others to know about, that we will point them to in this portal. So that's the plans going forward. The other thing we also want to do is do a bit of a gap analysis. What unmet needs are there still out there? Once we have that intelligence of what's already out there, we want to then go back to employers and other workplace stakeholders to get a sense of what other unmet needs we need to address going forward. And then implement and develop some tools and resources, or maybe modify existing ones that will address those unmet needs. And in a session we have tomorrow afternoon, and hopefully you'll all be here tomorrow afternoon, we're going to kind of ask you to brainstorm with us about what we need to do going forward, more broadly than just the tools and resources, but certainly that will be a key thing we want to think about. What other things do we need to develop within our IDEA initiative and collectively with our partners in the next 3 years of our funding envelope. And so the next piece is our highlights with the Incubator Hubs 2 to 5, who will be profiling some work they've been doing over the last little while. Some of the work they're profiling is already out there for use on our website. Some of it's in development, ready to be released in the next little while kind of thing. So they're lightning talks, they're teasers, and this afternoon, as you've heard, we have some breakout workshops where you can do deeper dives with each of these Incubator Hubs, as well as our own on the employment standard implementation guidance. So it'll give you a sense of what to expect this afternoon, maybe help you, or maybe get you more stressed about which one should I go to. They all sound great, you know, but those workshops, you have to pick and choose which one you want to participate in. This will help you come and make that choice. So without further ado, I'll pass it. Oh, one more thing I want to mention. Because of the workplace systems and partnerships, Incubator Hub. We call it Hub 1 internally. It doesn't have a profile here. I just want to do a shout out, particularly for my partner here, Don Gallant, who's co-leading this initiative, this Incubator Hub with me. He's been a resource for us over the entire time period of this initiative, and going forward, we're going to be tapping into his deep knowledge much, much more, because he's involved in an initiative that we just got funding for, which we'll be profiling tomorrow. So stay tuned. So I'll pass it on to Rebecca to talk about Incubator Hub 2, Employment Support Systems.
Speaking of accessibility, I'm not sure my height was what they had in mind when they built this podium. All right. This feels even weirder, actually. I'm not going to do that. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm really excited to be here and to talk to you about the work we're doing in Hub 2. The lightning talks have to be really exciting because we are literally standing between you and lunch, which I believe is happening after this. So with that, I'm going to try to be a bit upbeat and convince you that Hub 2 is where you want to be this afternoon. Because I heard it's a competition. Is that true? No. Okay. So the Hub 2 is really the employment support systems, where we work on issues impacting the employment support sector, as well as the idea of wraparound supports for people with disabilities and employers as they pursue hiring and onboarding people with disabilities. We have an amazing team. I'm sorry, I don't have a slide describing the team, but we do have an amazing team. And if you come this afternoon, I'll introduce you to everybody. But within our hub, we are focused kind of on two main areas. One is how do we deliver supports for employers in the employment support sector, knowing that the employment support sector has really revolved around a focus on providing supports for the job seeker and the disabled worker, partly because that's where the funding flows. The majority of the funding flows to helping the individual, the disabled person, find, keep, perhaps even be advanced in the workplace. And then the second area is the idea of wraparound supports for disabled job seekers and workers. So that's really where our projects have landed. I'll tell you about 3 of the projects that we have completed and are still working on within our hub. So the first is we wanted to know what are these supports for employers that employers need and currently receive. So we started by doing a scoping review, and we are currently in the midst of talking to key informants, exploring the types of supports available and needed to help employers hire, retain, and promote people with disabilities. In this work, we've identified the supports needed. We've also begun to identify potential strategies and solutions to create inclusive environments and to help employers accommodate workers with disabilities. So the people we've been speaking to in this space are people who are on board, they want to do this work, and they're trying to sort of sort through how can they move forward in hiring and creating an inclusive workplace. The second project was really led by my master's student, Ikem Gruel, who is here today, who's covering her face over there, so I won't point her out any further. And again, you'll see a pattern here. She also did a scoping review and key informant interviews to examine the intersection of race and disability. So what kind of employment supports are there for racialized disabled workers? And what we found was that there, especially in Canada, there's a lack of research highlighting or examining this intersection. And there's a need to be flexible and to design personalized support and provide enhanced training around this intersection for service providers. And if you're interested in this work and you, for some reason, don't come to our afternoon workshop, there is some tools on the Vrai Idea website. There's some infographics and 2 published peer-reviewed articles depicting this work. And the third project I'll highlight is around disincentives to work. This is a project that is of great interest, I think, across Canada and beyond among different groups, because it's a huge issue that we have income support programs being delivered to people with disabilities, and in many ways, these income support programs create barriers to employment. So we are currently conducting an international scoping review about what's been written about this idea of disincentives and incentives to work within government-funded or public income support programs for people with disabilities, and how do they impact employment outcomes. And we are about to engage in a consultation process to contextualize the findings through focus groups, and we hope to write a report on this topic, and also engage in co-designing policy solutions with community groups who are involved in this area. So I will leave it at that. One final slide. Why should you come to our workshop this afternoon? We are hoping to engage all the people in our workshop in a process of how we need to share these findings. And we also hope to get some input about some of the next steps for our hub. Okay, I will turn it now over to Hub 3, Dan Samash.
So after hearing about Hub 2 work, we decided to cancel the Hub 3 session, and we're all just gonna go there. No, we've been busy too. We've been doing a few things, and so I'll share with you a little bit about them, and you can make your choice after all of this. So Hub 3 is co-led by Arif Jetha, Sinead McCarthy, who's our MC for today, and myself. And we focus on transitions to work. And if you look at the transitions to work literature, you'll see an endless sea of research on accessing entry-level employment. What you won't see is a focus on career development, career advancement, and accessing jobs that the individual themselves would identify as high quality or a job of quality. So that is our kind of relentless focus within our work. Because we have this research background, we started with a scoping review. Our amazing team of researchers went through 5,000 different articles, and we only found 16 that focused on interventions on the school-to-work transition, thinking about job quality, and thinking about career advancement. So that's a pretty clear symbol of the paucity of the lack of research that we have in this space, right? So from there, we went and we said, well, what can we do? We're an action-focused kind of organization, Hub 3 as well. So we interviewed 30 people. We worked with our community partners, and we've come out now with 2 tools that are already available, and we have a whole bunch of other tools that are coming out soon too. So our first tool that came out of this is a guide for identifying champions within a workplace. This is a guide for employers and also supporting their work. So we saw earlier today, there were several slides that said, you know, champions are really important. We need more champions within organizations. But then if you were to go, how do I do that as an employer? How do I find those people? How do I support them in their work? You won't find resources on that. But, well, in the past you wouldn't. Now if you go to the Idea Tools and Resources website, you will find one there. And I think a lot of that work too was led by Megan Crouch, so amazing job there too, and RF's team. Now, from there, we also made a guide on accessible and disability inclusive career fairs. So this is a really, really long and detailed guide. Even if you're not making a career fair, if you are creating some form of an event, it's probably a guide that can help you in your work. We start the guide by exploring what are the principles of an accessible and inclusive career fair. Because often with practice guidance, we are delivered a whole bunch of different practices, and we don't actually know why we're engaging in those practices. Where are those coming from? So we start with the principles, and then we get into the details of how do you actually make this happen, whether it be logistics, structure of the event, collaboration and who you can collaborate with, because a lot of organizations these days simply don't have the capacity to do all the work that they want to do, so finding those people potentially external to your organization. That resource is also available online, so we'll be talking about that during our workshop. And from there, we have a ton of other projects ongoing. We have a guide for managers on ADHD and career success and how to support employees so that, again, we're not just thinking entry level, we're thinking advancement. We have a guide on chronic migraine and work. We also have a longitudinal study in the works. We don't see much school-to-work transition research that asks what happens across time when the person enters the workforce and as they develop their career, what actually happens. So there's a really awesome study on, which we're hoping to start very soon, to really look at that process, that path, and then ask how are people identifying and understanding things like career success, very importantly, for themselves, not someone else externally identifying it for them, but what does the individual actually feel about this, and how do their careers develop? And last, we have a project on mentorship, which Ansha Ahmed is here. She's helping a lot with this work. That project, we also had Jean-Marc Mock, who I don't think is here today, but has done some really nice work there. That is on, it's a resource basically for mentees, what a mentee needs to know when they engage in a mentorship experience, what mentors need to know when they engage in a mentorship experience, and also what program designers need to know. So that's not actually everything, that's some of what we're doing. And for our workshop, what we're going to be doing is a visioning session. So what does the ideal workplace look like that considers things like this transition into work and career development, career success, career advancement, and so on? So I hope you join us, and regardless, it'll be nice to talk to you after this if you ever want to talk about the work we're doing. And yeah, thanks everyone.
Good morning again, everybody. I'm the duly nominated representative of Hub 4 because I'm in person. Both Jordana and Jimin are virtual, calling in from Buffalo. So I'm really pleased to be here to share with you a little bit about what Hub 4 does. The title of the hub is Inclusive Environmental Design. And I co-lead it alongside Jordana Maisel, who is an associate professor in the Department of Urban and Regional Planning and the research director for the Center for Inclusive Design and Environmental Access, which is a different iteration of the word IDEA at the University of Buffalo. So members of the hub, Rebecca Gevirtz, whom you've already met, and postdocs Jimin Choi, from Jordana's lab and Shannon Killip from Rebecca's lab are part of the group as well. So I'm going to start by throwing a lovely, complicated StatsCan chart on the screen. My point isn't to take you through this. My point is to actually just call something to all of our collective attention, which we think about but don't actually really think about. And that is that the employment rate for persons with disabilities of working age as of 2022, and these are the Canadian Survey on Disability 2022 stats, is actually just over 60% compared to the non-disabled population at just under 80%. But then when we unpack this by disability group, when we unpack this by episodic compared to non-episodic disability lived experience, when we unpack this by sort of more severe functional consequence of lived experience, less severe functional consequence of lived experience, we find that the story isn't uniform. And this is what we often will forget about, that policies are wonderful things, but when we think about policy, often what ends up happening is we think about policy as well, this is our solution to every barrier that persons with disabilities may experience in the workplace, and that's actually not how life works. So when we think about workplaces and we think about how workplaces integrate accessibility into workplace policy, that really gets at the crux of the questions that Hub 4 was asking. Now, policy is very boring. I'll be very honest. Policy is very boring. My job in the next 5 minutes is to make this the most exciting thing so that you all show up at Hub 4. And of course, when we transform slides from one template to the next, we do things like everything gets converted to grayscale. That's not anybody's fault. It's not Therese's or Sabrina's fault. I didn't have a chance to check these slides as they got integrated. So nobody can read what's on the screen. I can't read what's on the screen, and I can't read what's on that screen. So I'm going to make this up. So what was on this slide was a pyramid of barriers to inclusion in the workplace. And the thing is that the top two layers of the pyramid are things that we're usually accustomed to: technological barriers and physical barriers and resources, and things that get in the way of persons with disabilities integrating within the workplace that are tangible that we can point to. The bottom layer of that pyramid actually includes social barriers and cognitive barriers and attitudinal barriers, and something that is actually at the center called NIMBY. And for those of you who don't know what NIMBY is, it stands for Not in My Backyard. It's a wonderful acronym, and it is the root of a form of covert discrimination called NIMBYism. And so if you actually remove that one keystone from this pyramid, then the pyramid actually will fall apart. And one of the things that I'd love to sort of demonstrate to you is that NIMBYism actually sits at the root of all of the barriers in the workplace. We have a world, and I have data to demonstrate this, we have a world that is theoretically welcoming but practically exclusionary. If we were to, on the x-axis of a hypothetical graph, put a series of questions that go from this is not at all my responsibility all the way out to I actually have to make a decision impacting a person with a disability as it relates to hiring, and we put on the y-axis the percent likelihood of being willing to do the thing that's in the question, then what we will actually find is that the majority of the Canadian public will actually fall on a negative trend line. So Canada at large is theoretically welcoming, but if we actually ask someone, would you hire a person with a disability who's qualified, many fewer people would say yes than who would say, yes, the workplace needs to be fully accessible. And then coming back to the initial concept that I was sharing with you, the percentage who says yes will change based on quality and type and disability group and lived experience and so on. So the world is not uniform, and our policies shouldn't be uniform either. So we had two broad questions that we were asking. One is, how do we change workplace culture? And two is, how do we create culture where none exists? And these two questions were central to everything that we're doing within Hub 4. And once again, gray circles are not readable. So our proposed answer, commitment, and we alluded to this in earlier sessions today, plus learning, plus systems equals culture change. That's our hypothetical mathematical formula. And policy and math, neither of which are very exciting, but trust me, they really are. And so our approach to this was really fourfold. We wanted to understand what employers are already doing, and so we dispensed with the academic lit review and went straight to the environmental scan. We wanted to understand sort of what was going on in terms of what employers are doing via what's online, what's on their website, what's publicly available via their commitment statements and their policies. What are they doing through key informant interviews? We're gonna do work, and the session this afternoon will get into this with respect to co-designing learning and development approaches that will work, particularly in the small to medium-sized enterprise space. And then we're also, along with Hub 1, doing the implementation guide for the employment standard. And so this afternoon, when you come and fill up the boardroom, we'll do a workshop on training and resources. We will do a little bit of a highlight that Jimin will take us through on what others are doing. And then we will get into a bit of a best practices conversation and some brainstorming. And then we're going to tell you what comes next for the work of the Hub. So very much looking forward to seeing you this afternoon. Please contact us. I've given you both of my email addresses, one of which is not readable, the other one is readable. And so you can get me either at my Ontario Tech U email address or my IdeaSTEM email address, and I can put you in touch with the rest of the hub as well. So thanks very much for your attention. Let's hear what Hub 5 has to say.
We're going to keep you on stage because there might be tons of questions.
Oh, okay.
Right. Hello. Welcome. And I'm sorry, I'm a little bit out of breath because I just finished teaching inclusive design. Welcome. I'm presenting on behalf of Hub 5, and our topic is disruptive technology and the future of work. And I'm going to speak out my slides because it's a joint presentation. Jutta sends her regards, but she can't be here today. So, welcome to the joint lightning talk that I'm presenting on behalf of Jutta Trevianus and myself. Assistive technologies. It's undeniable that assistive technologies are life changers, liberators and equalizers. Yet, the journey is often fraught with disappointment and unmet promises. Behind every device and innovation lies a domain shaped by emotional manipulation, disillusionment, and at times, broken dreams. Watch how our visual culture is already toxified by ableist youth techno-positivism around AI, exemplified by the image on the right. I'm forwarding two slides at the same time. Come on. Allow me to introduce you to the many co-designers that we are working with in Idea Hub 5. Their names are changed for privacy reasons. Luna landed a dream job after years of being passed over. The company supplied her with a refreshable Braille interface and screen reader. Supportive colleagues helped her thrive until a new software platform broke device compatibility. Luna's productivity and participation suffered, eventually costing her the job. Pete has access to the latest and greatest, the thing that everyone is talking about, an AI chatbot that takes his written text fragments and turns them into proper grammatically correct sentences. But they are missing his quirky sense of humor, his unique turn of phrase, and he feels like he's losing his identity. So these vignettes illustrate repeated patterns arising from systemic issues in the world of assistive technologies. Broken business models. Vendors struggle with economies of scale. IP restrictions stifle collaboration and innovation. Technical barriers. Special purpose devices are siloed, becoming rapidly obsolete as interoperability decays. Service gaps. Highly specialized professionals are needed, making support costly and difficult to sustain. And funding obstacles. As we all know, funding is often limited to niche, specialized solutions requiring medical endorsements and excluding mainstream products. And research constraints. Population-based research models demand statistical significance that outliers such as Luna and Pete are not included in. Opportunities and risks for people with disabilities are always at the extremes, and with AI, those extremes are magnified. It's undeniable that AI offers extreme opportunities for everyone. These can make life-changing differences for disabled people. AI can recognize speech, gestures, or objects, translate, summarize, and create content from prompts, and so forth. Examples include voice control, personal voice output, exoskeletons like at Stanford, gesture control, real-time captioning, transcribed glass, and also brain-computer interfaces. But these opportunities are countered by heightened risks. AI systems often advance statistical discrimination, using past data to sort and select their entrenched pre-existing inequities. Privacy is a paradox. For unique individuals, anonymization is impossible. Many must trade privacy for essential services. Video capture systems survey the users and others surrounding the user using apps that often come with targeted advertising. AI pushes the users towards stereotypical responses or behaviors. AI discrimination makes discrimination faster and harder to contest, especially as it sorts through applicants for jobs by so-called optimal patterns derived from past normative data, replicating past stereotypes and worse. This is of greatest concern when AI is used to find, match, sort, label, measure, optimize, calculate, and analyze people at scale. But how does disability show up? Not in a sphere, it should be in a circle, in a data set used by AI, for example. To visualize the diversity of needs, my colleague Jutta Trivianus has plotted 4 decades of such data. The result is a human starburst, where the form of a 2D scatter plot. Many of you know this as the bell curve, seen from the type, but this one is from the top, where most data points cluster near the center, inside the blue circle, or where a lot of these dots are. The greater the difference from the average, and from another, we move towards outwards the center, where needs are not alike, and solutions must be adaptive and genuinely individual. Any statistical predetermination is highly inaccurate in the middle, inaccurate as you move from the center, and wrong as you get to the edge. So I'm not talking about AI's ability to recognize and translate things that are average or typical, such as typical speech to text, or from one typical language to another, or label typical objects in environments, or find a path that most people take from one place to another. However, in such cases, if your speech is not average, or the environment you are in fails to recognize it, technology, and particularly AI, fail people with disability at larger and larger scales, if we are not working to change this. To address this problem, we need to do more than to address the data gaps, remove human bias from algorithms, and remove stereotypes from labels and proxies as prescribed by regulatory guidance, and that are adopted by more and more countries, luckily. Even with full participational representation in data, the AI will still rule with the majority against the outliers. So that brings us to our challenge. The way AI is currently designed is hostile to difference, and disability implies difference from the average. In IDEA Hub 5 and Inclusive Design Research Center at OCAD University, we are flipping this paradigm, as innovation is found at the edge, not at the complacent middle, and people at the edge, our co-designers, are first to detect the weak signals of crisis to come. True innovation lies at the edge of the human starburst by shifting from data exploration, seeking the sameness, to data exploration, embracing difference. We can create technologies and societies better equipped for change, uncertainty, and equitable results. So one of our works is we are actually filling the regulatory vacuum with a standard for Accessible Canada Act called Accessible and Equitable AI Standard. We're also creating tools to reduce harm to signal when an AI model will be wrong or unreliable because the person being decided on is far from the mean or average in the training data, meaning outside the circle. And in Hub 5, together with a diverse group of people from speech pathologists, programmers, artists, educators, we design open access assistive technologies and tools and interfaces. Part of this is the development of a language model with lead co-designers that are non-speaking adults who communicate using symbol-based short form, a minority language. We apply centering technology innovation at the margins rather than the middle of the starburst. To sum it up, I know this was long, This is what I'm hoping to activate together with you this afternoon in the workshop session, the shift from AI, artificial intelligence, to OI, outlier intelligence. So please join our workshop titled Shaping Inclusive AI Practices and Tools for Employment Access. Let's design outlier intelligence in the workspace that detests risks, adapts to the unexpected, and elevates diversity, not just for the inclusion's sake, but as a key to resilience. Thank you.